a sudden, the whole purpose of what I do is shifting. You're going to be dealing with a lot of stress. And when the brain is stressed, it actually shuts down critical thinking and we can't do it. And so I talk a lot about the brain has these different departments in the brain. And so we have a data department, we have a security department, we have a systems management department. So I call the data department Harold and the security department Bob. The problem is when Harold and Bob are stressed and change like this and this disruptive change and your whole job being out from under you and you don't know what you're doing anymore, that's a big stressor. So Harold and Bob are very stressed. So they send a message up to you where the critical thinking is, to the president of the brain. And they say, we're in danger. You go out and get a cup of coffee and the two of us will handle this. So what I see in schools a lot when I go in to do training or work with teachers is I see a lot of stress where the Harold and Bob of one person's brain is talking to the Harold and Bob of the other person's brain, but the critical thinking part of the brain where our smart and our personality and our humanity lives isn't there because they are at such a level of stress. And so I think understanding that, and that's what, when I talk about neuro, I talk about the importance of creating a sense of belonging and intellectual and psychological safety within organizations for students and for staff, because we're never going to get to critical thinking if we are beyond stressed and that part of our brain isn't functioning.
Goals.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to note as you're thinking about helping to prepare schools for this, when you look at how we started to teach social emotional learning, we started to teach it as a separate little subject, right? And so kids learn about certain skills and then they do a little worksheet or a little activity and then they move on and now they know it, taught experts, right? That's not how the brain learns. So when we think about critical thinking, we gain critical thinking skills through repetition, experience, and emotion. So if schools are truly trying to teach critical thinking, it's not a unit where they define critical thinking and they put together a workbook and you watch a YouTube video. It's truly about how they create and assess the learning environment. And so that students are having that opportunity. So one of the things that I could imagine schools method use more inquiry-based learning, use more exploratory learning where maybe there isn't one right answer. One thing I talk about is when I was teaching, I used to do a show me how you know. And so I would tell the students, I was an English teacher, so I would tell the students, okay, we read this novel, whatever. Here's why we read it. Here's what it had: great character development. It had great imagery, whatever. I would tell them what it was. I would show them the standards of what they should be able to do in regard to character development or literary devices or whatever. And then I would say, okay, you can show me how you know any way you want. But I'm going to grade you on this rubric that is standards based, that says this is what you can do. So I had a little girl, she was freshman. She came up and she said, can I do a dance? We had read To Kill a Mockingbird. And I thought, oh boy, okay, I said you could do it. But I said to her, you can dance the Nutcracker and flunk this. I said, you have to make sure that whatever you do with this dance, I'm grading you on these standards, right? And she was like, I got it. So she came back. She had created a move for each character and a little strip of music. And she explained first she explained about modern dance, which was super interesting because I didn't know about it. Then she had this move and some music. She explained how it was representative of the evolution of that character throughout the book. So she had all the main character moves. Then she strung the music together and actually performed for us. And then after she was finished performing, she broke down the dance and explained how it was a modern representation of the way the theme developed. That's critical thinking. As opposed to, we're going to have some matching, we're going to have who did what to whom, and then you're going to write an essay on a question that I have beat the answer into you for the past month, right? And that's how we teach right now. There's one right answer, and you're going to repeat that answer. Moving into different assessment methods is the way that you move into more critical thinking. She was not an AP student. She was an average to below average student, because I hear teachers go, oh, my kids could never do that. Yes, they can. And I think there's also a huge fallacy that teachers feel like I have to tell you everything before you have what you need to think about it. And the reality is the opposite. You can let the students discover the information with a good question that they have to go through and really look at multiple sources of information to figure it out, versus telling them all the information and then making them regurgitate it or practice it or tell you they've understood it.
Theory is that the system itself may be working against how the brain functions.
Absolutely.
What is AI exposing our children to the current systems? It's a huge thing. It's information offloading that you spoke about. So what are some of the skills that are becoming obsolete right now?
I think that skills that are algorithmic, you do step 1, step 2, step 3, right? So skills like that are skills that are going to be automated. So even thinking about with writing, there's portions of writing that are really deep thinking. And it's funny because when I was doing my doctoral work and writing my dissertation, my advisor said to me, there is no such thing as bad writing, it's bad thinking. And she said, so if you can write the most beautiful essay on the planet, but if you don't have good thinking, it's going to be a crummy essay, right? So it's not about, so when you think about even how AI is impacting writing, I was working with a teacher where I think we're going to see a pendulum swing away from having the kids on the computers all the time. So what she's starting to do is she's for schools because declining enrollment is rough on staffing and those kinds of things as well. Yeah, it's a scary time to lead in schools, but it's also one of the most exciting times because this disruption is unlike any other disruption. And I think we had an opportunity when we were disrupted with COVID. And I'm kind of sad that we didn't really capitalize on some of the things we could have learned about the experience of hybrid education or the experience of learning online or things like that. And instead, we kind of went to workbooking kids to death or worksheeting them to death. And it became more about compliance and completion than it really did about trying to figure out how to engage a whole new avenue for teaching. So I'm hopeful we don't do that again. I'm hopeful that we don't have schools adopting AI curriculum, AI literacy curriculum, and say, we'll teach them the AI literacy in a separate class. But our teaching and learning of core will remain exactly the same because the shift in the system needs to be at the core level, not just we're missing a piece of curriculum or a program of study.
Lisa, we've done things the same way forever. There are private schools, there are charter schools, there are public schools, and in the United States, and this podcast is global. Do you think that the current systems can evolve, or does it need to be completely reimagined?
I think that the systems that we have could reimagine themselves. I don't think they all have to close down and we have to open up new things. But one thing, I've been working with a few schools that are trying to start building schools within schools. Right. So trying some of these different models where you blow up the structure a little bit and see how that works, or you do more multidisciplinary work. How does that work? And starting to play in the edges. And I think that it can be done. And the thing that we have to recognize is that this is a huge threat for teachers as well. So the way we make this change needs to be very strategic and it needs to engage teachers in a way that is authentic. I see a lot of times that we ask teachers for their opinions and then we don't take them. And then we insert things. So in the Aspirations to Operations book, where I help leaders do this strategy, the first C, there's an 8C commitment framework. The first C is culture. And it's that sense of belonging and safety. I don't see that in schools right now. I see teachers burned out, overworked, stressed out, feeling like they're under a microscope, feeling like I was just talking to a principal. Resources. So you start to go through and say, how do I fix those so that the 5 in the middle, give the 2 in the front enough freedom to actually drive the boat a little bit so that they're testing the theories and they can help refine clarity on what it looks like. Get the 5 the training so that they're leaning more toward the rowing of the boat versus the sinking of the boat, and just ignore the sinkers. Ignore them for a while. Use your evaluation tool to say, hey, this is what we expect. This is what we were trained on. I don't see evidence that you're doing it. Help me understand why. But you evaluate them authentically and just say, I know you're capable of doing it and I'm helping you get there, but I can't make you want to do this. So it's up to you. And what you'll find is that when you start to approach it like that, you end up with your teachers are the ones that put pressure on the other person. They lose their informal leadership and respect among their peers because they're not part of the culture.
Yeah. Often we fear that those 2 or 3 that are steering the boat the other way are going to steer the others around. And I appreciate the perspective of majority will shift that focus to what's
Right.
going to be working. And what I'm
But they
hearing is that
only will. Yeah, and they only will. There's a lot of organizations, depending on the way the leadership manages, that those five sightseers do end up identifying with the boat sinkers, right? Because it's easier not
yeah,
to change. So those five in the middle are the ones that really are important for leaders to nurture and to provide support and to provide positive feedback so that you influence them to shift toward the rowers and not the sinkers.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Why does schools struggle to move from vision to execution?
I think part of it is because they don't have the clarity and the coherence and the cadence. So they don't know what they want. And when they don't know what they want, then they don't know how to celebrate when they see it. And the other thing I see in schools is that they focus on outcome data. And when you're creating a change or you're implementing something, you should be focusing on output data, not outcome data. And output data is the data that we ultimately control. It's say we're going to try inquiry learning at least once a week. Okay, now we have inquiry learning once a week. I can measure whether we did that. Did we do it? Did we not do it? So you need to have data that you're following because remember, if you measure it, it matters. If you don't measure it, it's just word salad, right? So if we measure what we say we're going to do, then we're actually measuring our theory of change. And so then if the outcome doesn't move, it's not your fault. It's, hey, we measured this. We did what we said we were going to do and it didn't work. So what we
Belief leaders need to let go of right now.
I think they need to let go of the industrialized model of we need to, so much of school is about control and compliance and rule following. And if you really think about our world in the next generation of work, we need disruptors. We need thinkers. We need people who are able to be adaptable and independent. We don't need people who do what they're told. That's what the systems will do. We will tell the systems what we want done, and they will do the systems. And I'm not, schools right now are still very much preparing people for a factory. You listen to your manager, you do what you're told, you put your outputs out there, and you work your way up by compliance and completion. We need to really rethink that and think about more entrepreneurial thinking, more creative thinking. And again, it's not just in art class. Like creative thinking, you got to be a creative engineer, you got to be a creative doctor, right? Creativity should be part of every field that we're involved in, and especially now because that is a uniquely human thinking skill for the moment, right? We can be super super creative in ways that a machine just can't yet. That it's doable, that this is all doable. It's not the boat is not sinking, but now is not the time to reorganize the deck chairs. Now is the time to really reset a new course, redecorate the whole boat, right? Rethink through all the things. And I think that it can be so exciting. Like all the things that we have learned from being in education, from our experiences as teachers or leaders or whatever role people have played in education, now is the time when everything's up. We could do anything. And how cool is that to be on the front edge of the next generation of educational change that's truly disruptive and modernizing the system in a way that it's going to prepare kids for the future? I would say strategize, move from aspirations to operations. Because as you think about this time, there's going to be a whole lot of great ideas, but great ideas are just noise and word salad unless you get down to the operations level and you really think about how do you strategically implement that system on the human system, not just the structures and the schedules and the program of study, the curriculum, whatever, but really focused on how do we move from aspirations to engaging people, to operationalizing the people in the system. Because policies shape change, but people make change. And we need to attend to the people if we want the change made and not just dreamed about.
Thank you for your work that you're doing and changes that you're making, the 2 books you've written, and for pushing this conversation forward, because at this moment, leaders are lost. And it looks like any idea they have towards moving, towards looking at students and their outcome and brain-based learning, it's going to be successful. And if this conversation challenge your thinking, good. That's where change begins. Take a moment and ask yourself, where in this system are you trying to implement change without fully understanding the people inside of it? Not going to work. And if this resonates, share it with a leader or an educator or someone that's navigating change in your school district, in your private school, wherever that might be. And you can find more tools, trainings, and conversations at yogipateltte.com. And in the show notes, you're going to look at Lisa's information in case you would like to consult with her. Lisa, once again, thank you for your wisdom, knowledge, and encouragement today.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.